right now.
Okay.
Hello, guys.
Hey, Sonny.
Hi, Mr. Chair.
Hey, Mr. Chair.
Hey, Purnell.
Okay, the meeting is now live, so I guess whenever you and Janine are ready, Mike, should be good.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. On a very snowy and cold day, but we're warming inside our homes. Could I have a roll call, please?
Calling the roll, Mr. Gallagher,
Here.
Ms. Conwell. Ms. Conwell is absent at the moment. Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Simon.
Here.
There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Welcome, Mr. Miller. Is there public
you.
comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has submitted any public comment.
Okay, in your package, you received the minutes of our January 19th meeting. If they're in order, I'll accept a motion in a second.
Lessons, we've made some adjustments. We'll do.
Second.
Who is the first?
Oh, okay. I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much. We have matters referred to the committee. Janine, there's no addendum to this?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
great. You can read 2021-0036.
And before I read it, also like the record reflect that Ms. Conwell is in attendance.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Conwell.
Resolution number 2021-0036, authorizing an amendment to contract number 128 with Ozan Construction Company for design build services for the central booking project at the Cuyahoga County Justice Center, effective 2/23/2021, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $2,419,505.
Thank you very much. Who's going to lead for the administration?
Mr. Chairman, this is Bob Corey, together with Bill Mason, and I believe also Mr. Dever and Mr. Reimer are available, as well as Administrator Gibson for any questions.
Okay. Invitations were sent out to the Common Pleas Court, the prosecutor, sheriff's office obviously is here, clerk of courts, Metro at the jail, public defender, probation also, the muni courts, the muni prosecutors, police departments, bail bondsmen, private law lawyers, and their associations. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to check the box for any of those groups that I've mentioned?
The public defender is here.
Public defender? Okay. Okay, Bob, if you would, if you could take us, and I want to be as educational as we can get. So if you could start with central booking, not necessarily the project, but what it is and where we are right now talking about the actual build out.
So, as we all know, the county has undertaken a huge effort to replace the current jail facility. But we know from the consultants that we paid and all of the stakeholders that prior to doing that, one of the key actions recommended and to have effective arresting and detainee management, including the reduction of jail population, is the implementation of what we're calling a central booking program.
I apologize for the
Yes.
interruption. I just wanted to let you know that the clerk of courts is also present.
Okay, and anyone.
Clerk Bird could not get off mute. I apologize.
That's fine. Anyone participating, if you would just mute while Bob is speaking and try and get my attention if you have a question as we move through this. I don't want to hold questions because as we go, I'm sure there will be questions that you'll be able to answer, so we don't have to move on back to retrace our steps, Bob.
Okay, sounds good. So in order to have an effective program, you must include all the stakeholders in the justice system. And we're going to talk about some of them to make better, more informed, and earlier, more timely decisions regarding the arrest, whether there's going to be a diversion, what the appropriate charge is if that's necessary, and the release of arrestees from custody. To do it effectively, central booking eliminates the current very linear criminal justice process that we have that have these delays built in at every step. And it engages all the players together right at the front end at the arrest, in the Sally Port, right at the jail. These agencies include the following that you would all expect: the arresting agency, the county jail staff, the city prosecutor, the county public defender, municipal court, common pleas court, and within them, both their common pleas pretrial services, the municipal court, clerk of courts, and the county clerk of courts. By bringing all these folks early in the arrest, when the person first gets pulled into the Sally Port, and even before that, because as the detainee is pulling up to the Sally Port, that arresting officer, in this case a Cleveland police officer, will have already called the Sally Port and said, hey, I'm on my way with one, and here are the particulars to the extent that I have them. So they're prepared and know when they see him on the camera as the gate opens who's coming in. So we'll be able to do right at the front end all the following. These two first points. We'll be able to make more timely and informed decisions about what to do with this arrestee, because he's not even charged yet. And we'll have the capacity to affect the best course of action at that point. I mean, so you can make great decisions, but if you don't have the capacity to put those into action, then you're losing something substantial. So it includes actions like, I'm going to continue to get more particular. So after the arrest, right, before the inmate is charged, they're in the Sally Port. The booking sergeant for the Cleveland Police Department, together with the city prosecutor and the county prosecutor, can review with that arresting authority, even maybe before he prepares his initial police report, whether this case could have been diverted to our diversion center in the first place. If not, the next question is, well, what's the appropriate charging? You've got the public defender there, you've got the county prosecutor, you've got the municipal prosecutor, and maybe they could say that, well, you anticipated that this case is going to be charged as a felony, a felonious assault. Perhaps now that we have the county prosecutor, assistant county prosecutor, and the city prosecutor talking to each other, they can say, no, this is really an assault, because misdemeanor assault, because it doesn't meet our policy for serious physical harm. And instead of that case being gone to common pleas court, it can stay at a more appropriate, lower charge that fits the facts in municipal court. Also, another key bullet point is the common pleas pretrial assessment individuals. The pretrial assessment team will be present on the third floor at central booking. What can they do? They can perform all those court services that they do, those assessments using their risk assessment tools to make determinations about who we are dealing with, criminal history. They can do the pretrial assessment interviews right there. And even if a determination is made that the person still needs to be charged, right, they can already be making decisions about, well, should this maybe go to the veterans court or the drug court or our mental health court? All of the great, now we have domestic violence court up and running, all of the great specialized courts that we have in process. And then finally, in order to facilitate this, that arrestee needs to have an advocate, an attorney advocate. So with the public defender there, at a minimum, he could be advising him or their constitutional rights. He can be a advocate with regard to appropriate bonds and bond conditions, and to have the potential for a discussion about whether the case should be charged in the first instance. The public defender can be there directly to talk to the city or the county prosecutor about whether this case is even appropriate for charging, because he or she is there representing the arrestee right at the point of arrest. So,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
yes,
Is this 24/7?
no, not at all. Please.
When do we get to 24/7?
Well, we get to 24/7 booking when we first get in place booking during the morning, which we currently have, midday and the afternoon. So, then we could worry about night court at that point. So I'm going to address that question in line with the fact that we are on our third work group meeting where we're working out all these details, which is, are we going to have electronic court appearances right out of the Sally Port? Are we going to have a court? What would be, if we're going to have 3 court appearances a day, what would the administrative judge, Michelle Early, need in terms of her operations and what those processes are? So for each of those questions, the work groups are working through all those details. So everybody's committed to the overall plan, and I wouldn't say high-level plan, but the mid-level plan. But now it's going to be, what time is the court going to be? How is it going to be staffed? Is it going to be in 3D? Are we going to move to, because we're going to support electronic hearings right out of the Sally Port. Are we going to move, in the post-COVID era to electronic hearings more than we are in person, where we have to take them up to 120 Holding right next to Judge Early's courtroom and bring them into the courtroom.
So what's the overall?
So whether it's 24/7 is, yes, that's the goal, but we have to work toward that.
What's the overall cost? Because I'm seeing now a cost to build this, but if say we built it today and it took unrealistically 4 months to do it, and then all these agreements come in with all this other technology needed, are we then coming back to add to this bottom line total to expand what the other courts and participants may need? How many employees is the Common Pleas Court willing to move into this project? How many employees and I know you're probably not there with these people, but I'm wondering how we build something without knowing who's really going to be needed on site. What medical are we talking about? What's the process there? Maybe you can get into that. But it just seems to me that this is just an amount to build without true agreement from the participants. Because if somebody sees something they don't like, they can walk, because we're not forcing anybody to do this. Does that affect what we're doing here? Just some questions for you to address as you go through. But the overall cost isn't this, what we're looking at. The overall cost is much more, and I don't know what that is. And evidently, you guys don't know what that is, or do you?
No, I mean, it's going to be just as you said, Mr. Chair. It's going to be just as you said. Let's take pretrial services for Common Pleas Court. So we have done a couple of presentations on the layout, the structure of the third floor. Bill Mason, myself, together with not Greg Popovich, Andrea Knast, and the administrative judge himself, Brennan Sheehan, walked the third floor, and they provided us a preliminary plan of what they would need by way of office space in there to bring the pretrial service of the program. So they're fully committed to that. But whether that is 2 pretrial services folk or 4, no, I do not know that yet. Likewise, when we're talking about the public defender, and Cullen is on here now, in order for him to staff this, can he do that with existing staff? Does it allow him, because of efficiency of process allow him to move staff rather than have additional staff? No, I imagine that he's going to have a full-time equivalent assigned there. And so Cullen Sweeney, public defender, is charged with the responsibility to come back to the work group as part of our bullets is, what are your processes as you understand them? How do they mesh with each other's? What resources do you believe that you need and why? And then the work group works through that. I believe that that it could be iterative, that perhaps that we start with 2 pretrial, let's say, services people assigned there, or 4, whatever the number is. And then if you determine that additional capacity is required because the case numbers are higher than you would have thought, but I doubt that would be the problem, then capacity could be added.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could jump in here too, one of the bigger picture items with this all is that, as you know, we'll be building a new jail. Once that new jail is built, this operation that we are creating and working through will be carried over into the new jail. So we'll learn a lot. We certainly will learn a whole lot, and then build that into the new jail. And in addition to just the processes, we'll be able to right size the jail for the population that we expect to be here and after the new jail is built.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. To Mr. Curry or Mr. Mason, it sounds like there's 2 components to this whole process here for central booking. The process or the theory of central booking that I think we all agree is a good thing that we're working towards to trying to alleviate burdens on the process and the defendants themselves. And then there's this build out that you guys are seeking as part of this process. So it just sounds to me right now, Mr. Curry, that you have a very good understanding of what it is that you want out of this process, but I don't know that council's getting the details that we're looking for, because I don't know if they exist yet. It sounds like it's still a work a process in work here at work with the other players involved. And just looking from, having the clerk of court here and the public defender here, I don't see a lot of the other parties, including, the county prosecutor. I would imagine would want to be a part of this discussion. And I just don't understand why all the players aren't more involved, at least at the councilmatic level. I understand you guys have had discussions, on your own and in meetings and such, which I do appreciate. But I don't think council's getting the entire a full understanding of why we need $4 million for this build out for this process that is still a work in progress.
With regard to where you're getting the 4 million, I'll leave others to address that. But I'm going to take issue with you respectfully, Mr. Councilman, and say that this is the first that we're hearing that council is feeling that they don't have the adequate information, and we need to correct that immediately. Also, I given the fact that invitations went out just yesterday, I imagine other stakeholders might not have. I know, for example, that Judge Sheehan is unable to be on the call and would otherwise have welcomed the opportunity to be on the call. And I'm glad Prosecutor Sweeney, the public defender Cullen Sweeney's here. But all the folks that you just mentioned are in our work groups and have been, and they are fully committed.
Mr. Curry, but council's not, and this is the first we're hearing of this process. And it just seems when members of the administration come before council, there's usually a pretty solid plan in place when asking for this kind of money. Now, with all due respect, and this isn't on you, a reflection on you or Mr. Mason in any way, we just got done yesterday with a meeting dealing with an ERP system that's over 2.5 years over budget. And it started out as something of an idea that sounded like a great idea at the time that I think council was on board with. And it's kind of really become an octopus in a lot of ways. And I'm just a little leery of this, especially with, a new jail perhaps in the future and spending too much money on the build out of this concept that's out there. I hope you can appreciate my concern.
Absolutely, but what I'm suggesting is that we do have, I mean, I've talked to personally management at Cleveland Police Department, right? I have worked with Common Police Court for the many months that I've been here on processes. I've talked to Prosecutor O'Malley, and they come to the work groups, and we're getting into details such as looking at the number of hourly arrests now, so that the prosecutor's office can determine whether they need 1.5 or 2 full-time equivalents associated with the project. So we do have, now to the extent that we need to provide this information to you in a more fulsome way, I could appreciate that, and we're happy to do that. Happy to do that.
Let me, if I might just jump in. I mean, the question is, why are we doing central booking then? So, well, before we arrived here, we were having deaths in the jail probably every other month. It was overcrowded. There was 2,400 people in the jail. That's why we're doing it. We wanted to reduce the jail population, make it more manageable so we don't have those kind of things happening. In addition to the things we already talked about. So it's more efficient, less jail days per inmate, and diverting them out when it's appropriate. Those tools that we're discussing aren't available, generally speaking, right now. We want to make it a better process, period.
And I agree with that, Mr. Mason, but I just want to make sure that everybody is on board, because I've heard in the past that some prosecutors would bypass that, or some of the municipal court judges. And I think everybody should be on board with what the administration is proposing here. And I just want to make sure, every pertinent player is on board.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, Michael Dever with Public Works. I'd just like to let everyone know also, as we've had the Justice Center Steering Committee, and this discussion has taken place in that committee, and there has been input from all of the stakeholders over the last 2 years. And we developed a lot of paperwork and how this process should be working. That started well over 2 years ago. And I know central booking had been talked about at least 15 plus years ago. So there has been an ongoing discussion on this for quite a while. And specifically, Andy Couples from our DLR group has prepared information on how the central booking should operate, because they're implementing this throughout the country. And we're a little bit behind, I think, behind some other areas, but we are catching up. And I believe that centralized booking is very important in regards to jail population management.
Mr. Chair,
And Sonny Simon, please.
thank you so much. I appreciate Public Works Director getting involved with this, but this is a criminal justice matter that, when you talk about we're behind the 8 ball. I'd like to see the statistics where central booking has been successful and perhaps where it's not. We're different from Franklin County, for example. We're different from smaller counties that have different situations. So this isn't a cookie cutter situation, but I want to know, who's on the working group. I want to identify every group that's been a part of this, who the representative is. I want to know data that you've been collecting for whatever time you say you've been collecting data. I want to see that. I want to understand the plan. If your intention is to build something that's going to start in the city of Cleveland, is that correct? You want to start with Cleveland? Okay.
Yes.
Is the judge on board? Is Judge Early on board with this? Has there been a commitment in writing, and what's needed for that court at this point?
In principle, yes, and significantly, yes. But there are I can point to issues that Judge Early is not on board yet, because she wants to see more information, let's say, from Common Pleas Court. But yes, she is on board in principle with this, and having all of the stakeholders together with her court involved early in the process for quick first appearances with her pretrial folks and Common Pleas Court pretrial folks. But do we have every agreement on every aspect of, for example, like direct filing in Common Pleas Court? No, we're still working through that. And so I'm going to represent, there are some still details that I would like to see occur that all the stakeholders aren't on board with yet, but nothing that would undermine the entire program.
Okay, you know, I like the idea of central booking just for, on the record, but I think this is premature with regard to council's decision-making. If the plan is to start with Cleveland, we need the judge here to say, yes, this is what I need, this is what I want. But are we building something for all of the municipalities then, at this point? We're
The
gonna
infrastructure will be
broaden
there.
this- So.
But understanding
they?
that the city of Cleveland, understanding that the city of Cleveland represents the vast majority of misdemeanor and felony charges, we're starting with the lion's share of the cases right now. And so we believe that once we have that infrastructure in place, that we have those processes in place, that it would be better and more responsible to phase this. So get Cleveland on board, get more than half the cases through the central booking process, and then move to the suburbs.
So we would spend money. Okay, I'm gonna pass, but that's the information I would like. And what I'd like as part of this, Mr. Chair, if you're willing, is to take each stakeholder group to come and talk to us separately, like the criminal defense bar. I want to know their opinion on what's needed, how this would work for their defendants that they represent, because there's so many aspects to this that I'm not sure the county council, and I don't truly appreciate every facet of this. The clerk of courts, what's needed from each of these stakeholders, instead of just hearing, we're going to build this and we're behind the 8 ball and they'll come. That isn't how I would like to proceed before I approve any kind of money, especially with this, last minute presentation asking for this amount of money. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tuma, were you done? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
Chairman.
Mr. Tippett.
No, yeah, I was, and I appreciate Ms. Simon's questions. Thank you.
Bob, for the committee, in the Justice Center jail build out committee, this has been a hot topic to the point that there was, I think, miscommunication amongst many of the people listed on our chart here that we invited today that for one reason or another aren't here. Some are, but most of them aren't. Their concern was that the county, meaning the administration and the council, were dragging their feet on this process, which isn't necessarily the truth. We do have experts in that committee that, quite honestly, should be here today presenting to the council. Sonny Simon's question, I think, would have been answered. Mr. Tuma's concerns might have been addressed. But I think if we had all these people here, that their concern, if we were to stop movement on this project today, that it'll never move. And that was their opinion. And I said at the time that we are not going to stop a project that's necessary and time is of the essence. But we also need, what Ms. Simon says, is the information and the assuredness that those that are pertinent to this process, Judge Early being one in particular, we need some form of writing that says, yes, we're in 100%, and we never get that. We're always given the carrot and the stick.
Chairman.
And to cut, really, because I don't want to hold this in committee, but I have a sense on the questions I'm hearing, that's where it's going. Would it not be unreasonable to allow this legislation, after Bob's done, there's more discussion to be had, to, if this were to move out of committee and this were to go to council, is it unreasonable to assume or expect that the participants in this would have signed documentation that they are participating and will accrue any of their charges, will accrue our charges? I just don't want to get into, as Mr. Tuma just said, another ERP situation, which is a thorn in the side of this council, as you all know. Would it be unreasonable to expect such documentation?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bill Mason. I mean, I take to what you all are saying to heart because you do need to know the information, no issues with that. But in fairness to the other partners, you only asked them to come here yesterday afternoon. I mean, everybody's got a schedule that they build out for weeks. So it was a little fair to ask them to be here today.
Oh, who's
And we talked to you yesterday. We had this conversation.
right, but who's
And we talked about what we were going through, the processes that we are engaged in with the different work groups, and that we're working and formulating exactly the nitty gritty and how it's all going to work. We tried to let you know yesterday that we didn't think it was timely right now to have the discussion on the nitty gritty of the who, what, where's, when. And I thought you were in agreement with that and that you wanted to still have these members show up. Well, it was only less than a 24-hour notice to get them here. So it's not, they're not here because they don't participate or they don't want anything to do with it. It's just because they got other things going on that didn't allow them to drop their schedule to get on the Zoom with us today.
Well, and again, I'm not presenting, so I'm not the one that provides testimony. This is your presentation and your testimony that I see everybody that Mr. Devers here, Mr. Corey's here, you're here, the jail personnel are here, everybody's here, but I don't see Judge Early and Judge Sheehan. And I think the concern on the council, and I may be wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong, committee, is that there seems to be, and I said this yesterday in a discussion, is this a bill? If we build it, they will come, or is it if we build it, they might come? And if they will come, they're more than happy to sign a document saying they're in. If they're not going to come, maybe it's a wait and see. And we're going to have those wait and seers. There's no question about it. But the big dog is Cleveland. And I don't think it's unreasonable to have some sort of assuredness that Cleveland's going to participate in this. I would assume that 99.9% they're going to, but we don't know that until we know that. That's only my concern. I don't mind moving forward with the build out, but I'll be damned if I'm going to get caught with another ERP situation. That horse is not leaving this barn anymore. So I get where you're at, and I know the background and why we need to move forward, but we need these participants to let us know, yeah, we're satisfied with the movement of the administration, and we need this desperately in our community. We're not getting that. Actually, we're getting a little bit of the opposite, as I shared with you.
Mr. Chairman, can I weigh in?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I think we all know the importance of this project, but it's my recommendation, based on my colleagues, everything we've heard, the questions were excellent. They were right on point to the heart of the matter. We should hold this in committee. If they need more time, we understand the urgency of it, but we need the questions that this committee asked, that Scott Toomer, Councilwoman Sunny Simon, those are legitimate questions, and those answers need to be given. The parts of the criminal justice system, they have to use this facility. And if they have not properly weighed in, then I say we hold it in committee, give them the time to weigh in if they are in full support or if they have concerns, and not just a letter that presumes that they are already in support. Give them the fair opportunity to say what they need to say and then move forward from there. But that would be my recommendation, to give the justice system time to weigh in and do the due diligence necessary. The ERP is a perfect example. A few minutes waited now will pay off in the long run.
Mr., if I could, and Bob, I don't want to take away from your role here, but Mr. Sweeney, do you have your ears on there?
I do, yes.
Where are we at? Can you help us here as far as the council's concerned? And I'm not saying that your concerns aren't being listened to and aren't being met, but there does seem to be a disconnect with some members of this group. And I'm wondering, do you see the same thing, and what your thoughts are as far as the timeline of this?
I certainly don't have the same level of intimate knowledge as Bob or Bill, and haven't had individual conversations with any of the other participants. So I don't want to necessarily speak for them specifically, but I will say that, you know, in the working group, which we've started to have, there's been good discussions, but there are some big picture things that I think still need to be decided. I do think Cleveland Municipal Court, just to be honest, from what I've heard at the meetings, has some hesitancy, you know, and maybe those are things that can be resolved easily. I don't know, because I have not spoken directly with Judge Early, but I think most people envision central booking as a positive. I know I do. I think it's good potentially for our clients, and I'd like to see something like that happen, you know. And so, you know, we're committed to work to see that become a reality. But you know, it does seem like there are unresolved questions that are important. And so, for instance, it's difficult for me to answer the question of, will we need additional resources without knowing, to perform our envisioned role, without knowing, is this going to replace some of the existing processes such that I can shift people from one room into this process. So, you know, whether or not these two things should happen simultaneously, I think is a question for council and the administration. I think it's an important goal, but I do think there's some important unresolved questions, but I hope that we'll get there.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman and my colleagues, I do believe that it's important that everybody get their questions answered, and that everybody be on the same page on this, and so a few weeks one way or another and in the timeline isn't going to make a huge difference. But I would also remind everybody that when we talk about the size of the new jail that we're going to build, the cost per additional cell over 30 years is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for one cell. And we really need to put this program in place relatively quickly, and find out what kind of impact it in fact is going to have, so that we can make the right decision on the size of the jail facility, which is one of the most important financial decisions that the county is going to make in the next few years, not to mention the effect that it's going to have on racial justice and equity and other considerations. So I'm just suggesting that we should take what time we need to bring people together and create a sufficient comfort level, but we should clearly be of a mindset to move quickly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Mason.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with what's been said, especially Council President Purnell about waiting a couple more weeks down the road. That's what we were talking about yesterday. We let you know that it wasn't ready to have this kind of a conversation. They were still broad conversations. We needed to tighten them up. We thought that 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road, we can come back with you with some pretty significant findings, some ideas. I don't know if we'll have the writings done by then, but we're working very diligently to make this process tight and fine-tuned. And when you brought that up yesterday, and maybe it was our fault, we didn't see that coming, but we didn't think you wanted to get in the weeds. It was about the building of the project, but I get the two, and I don't have any issue with it. If you want to hold off for 3 weeks, hold off for 3 weeks. We'll continue to work to get the details together so the questions you have are answered.
It's not necessarily, well, this is just the way the conversation has gone. And I can't stress to the committee enough how important that the first step in this, which is building this out, is going to be. Unfortunately, we're coming off a meeting with the ERP, and I think people are associating the two projects, and I don't think it's unnecessarily untrue to do that. I mean, you know, we right now, I don't think that's the administration's problem. I think it's our problem because we keep funding it. And I think we're once bit, twice shy on this, and maybe getting Cleveland to agree helps kickstart this moving forward. What's the timeline on getting this finished from start?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Mike Dever here again. So our intent was to have basically the space be able to be occupied in August with overall completion in September. But we were ready to be able to move people into the space come August.
Okay, so it's not an easy project right off the bat. It's a little bit more involved than even we know about.
Yeah, the challenges are really it's in the Sally Port, which is in the secured space of the jail. So working through with the State Department of Corrections and obviously the Cleveland Building Department. So we'll be able to navigate through that, and we do not see a problem with meeting those schedules with a few extra weeks to have a further discussion on this.
Okay. For Bob or Mr. Mason, when do we anticipate Cleveland will be willing to sign a document suggesting their willingness to participate?
Well, we'll have that conversation with her. So we have not asked that question right now.
Can I ask who on the working committees have agreed in total on the project moving forward? Prosecutor?
In total or
complete as you're presenting it?
Yeah, the Cleveland Police Department, county jail staff, of course, the city prosecutor, the county prosecutor, county public defender, municipal court. Again, not every detail. And we talked about Judge Early and that she needs reassurances on some aspects before she commits to others. Common Police Court, county clerk of court, and I'm having a meeting with Kim Bates at the Cleveland Municipal Clerk of Court later this week to get a better sense for where they're at. They're not. It's not a linchpin, but we want their participation.
Okay.
Then we could maybe reduce duplication of clerk services if the county clerk of court, under the supervision and direction of Naila Bird, works with the clerk of municipal court to have maybe a joint filing system. It doesn't undermine the system if we don't do that. But those are the kind of details that we're trying to get even efficiencies, reduction in costs also where we can.
And that leads to, I mean, this is like a tsunami of questions, and I apologize for that, but I think they're legitimate. And, when you talk about the Cleveland Muni Court, the Cleveland Muni Clerk, our clerk's office, the prosecutor's office, public defender's office, various other stakeholders have completely different computer systems. We've gone through this octopus of ridiculousness before. I'm wondering, are we finally heading to that one computer system that's going to service everybody, much like the federal courts throughout the United States, or are we going to continue to have our fiefdoms, and the cost is astronomical to maintain all these different programming systems, and then you got security concerns. If we're going to maintain that, who are we going to hire to come in to put these all together? It's, as you can see, they're all.
Can I address that major point though that you raised, please? That would be a project in and of itself that would demand its own scope of services, cost. That would require agreements, its own separate agreements between different governmental agencies. I mean, we don't have the luxury of having a county court like Wayne County where it's, one court system with one computer system, and then everybody buys CourtView. I mean, we've got XJail and Securus in our jail. We've got ProWare and Common Pleas Court, as you point out, right? We've got CourtView, and the city of Cleveland is moving from CourtView to Tyler, right? So if we were to wait for a comprehensive criminal justice package, then the jail will be built. The jail will be breaking ground on the jail by the time we've started that process. Nevertheless, there are things you can bite off by having interfaces between systems. Like one of the things we're in conversations about is when Cleveland Municipal Court gets its new state-of-the-art Tyler process, we should have an interface between Tyler and XJail. And so those are the things that you could do while still demanding, they're doable. And even if without those, you still got the players right there. And if it's a conversation between the city and the county prosecutor about where it should be charged, it can be low tech. So we have discussed that and have determined that waiting for a comprehensive court case management system would be a futile effort.
Is there any reason we didn't try and do an MOU with all the participants, much like we did with the Justice Center Steering Committee? I know that became a problem within a problem itself, and I don't think everybody's comfortable with it, but they signed it and we're moving forward as best we can.
It hadn't occurred to me, and the question is, did we have one before I got here? I'm kind of asking myself that question and others on the call, but no, it had not occurred to me because we were getting the participation. So I built an assumption that that we were all on board with the concept of central booking and details, not all of them, but and details. So
I'm sorry for this. If you would go
No.
on.
If I could jump in just for 1 second, Councilman Gallagher.
Yes.
We have not contemplated taking on the systems at all. That's not something we venturing down that road to do. We know that it's a big task. Doing what the central booking and building diversion center and making that all work is a big task. That's what we're focused on.
I would submit that that's almost an impossible task, having spent the first 3 or 4 years since this new government came into being, literally fighting the courts to try and get them to move into one system. And it was not nearly impossible, it was impossible. Everybody has the best system in the world, don't you know? And unfortunately they don't, but that could not be, told to anybody. And you have these walls built up of separately elected, and I have to respect that. And that's where we were at. So I see an enormous hill to get over in a very short period of time that could literally sideline this entire project if these entities aren't realistic going into the future with one like system. But maybe an argument for another day or discussion for another day. So Bob, if you would, please.
Yeah, I'll continue. I'm just going to add one additional point on the systems, but again, I think a great deal can be done with connections between systems. When I got here, there was already very good data exchanges between ProWare and the jail system called IMAX, right? So, and when we went to Securus, those interfaces are carried over. There's data interfaces between the jail system and the county prosecutor's office. When XJail comes on board and we go live, those interfaces will move over. And then I think as we work through central booking, we can continue to find other data points on existing interfaces and add those data points to support central booking. So it all is not lost, even without a comprehensive system. So where I left off was to do this effectively, we've already talked about the stakeholders. And so the question that I asked now, the rhetorical question is, what opportunities does it present in more particularity? And I said that you'd be able to make more timely and informed decisions right at the front end, right when that detainee, arrestee is brought into the Sally Port, because you will have all of these players right there. So, and then you're going to have the capacity to affect the best court of action. So not only you're going to make better decisions because you'll have the players there that all have a stake in making decisions about how this person should be charged, whether the person should be diverted, but then you'll have the capacity to actually affect that course of action. So what are we talking about? So the person comes into the Sally Port, and it is a mental health individual that Metro Health has done an assessment on. Pretrial services have done an assessment right at the front end, and it's clear that this person, based on the interviews and prior criminal history, has a history of schizophrenia. The early identification of those individuals can, right there, and we don't have this process in place, right, but easily can put in place just using jail staff, Cleveland Police Department, right, is who should be diverted from the justice system for mental health treatment altogether out to our diversion center. Right now, the jail is just taking them in, they're getting dressed in and going up to the courtroom, working their way through the criminal justice system when they could have been out altogether. Falling short of that, perhaps they need to be charged. Perhaps they don't meet the qualifications for diversion of the diversion center, but they meet the qualifications for specialty courts like the mental health court, like the drug court docket, like the veterans court, and they can be diverted to those courts post-charge. What is the appropriateness of the charge? Right now, what we're planning on doing, and I've talked to Cleveland Police Department, I've even talked to them about whether or not they would have to pay rent at central booking, and we've assured them, no, we want your participation. They're going to get the booking sergeant right into central booking, so when that inmate, that arrestee, is brought into the Sally Port, the arresting officer and the booking sergeant, who make these joint decisions together with the city prosecutor, can be right there to determine the appropriate charge. All the decision makers are right there, and again, is this a felony? Is this a misdemeanor? Oh, this is really a misdemeanor. Or this is no probable cause whatsoever. The person should not be charged, and then they should be released. What else does it allow us to do? Again, we talked about the pretrial screening and intervention for the range of release alternatives, so I won't go into that anymore. I already have. Early assignment at defense counsel. So Cullen Sweeney's folks, in some fashion, right, are going to be there to fight for an appropriate bond. And Mr. Sweeney's even suggested some changes to our mission statement, which focuses on the lowest restrictive bond and bond conditions being enforced, and that people not be kept in jail, he advocates, simply because they can't afford to make bond. He's at the table and able to fight for an appropriate bond. So even if they have to be charged, even if they have to go to common pleas court, he's going to be there to make sure that the lowest and least restrictive bond is in place. And then pretrial services is going to be there, that if an inmate right there at 9 comes into the Sally Port, is processed in, taken to the 9 o'clock first appearance docket in Judge Early's courtroom, right, that they will have already, if that person is released with a $1,500 bond or a personal bond, they can engage in pre-release screening counseling with that defendant so that they understand and will abide by the terms of their release. Again, this process does not exist this early in the arrest process, and it will be engaged to do so that before that person is released, they can get counseling on the terms of their release and to make sure the defendant understands all the terms, whether an ankle bracelet is imposed, requiring them not to, get near the victim, etc. So again, to summarize, the mission of the central booking is to engage all the decision makers together and early in the process. in that arrest and arraignment process. So central booking is a focus, folks, on just the early part of the criminal justice process, where we're not making the best and most timely decisions and need to do so. There's other processes and other specialty courts that deal with, post arraignment, but central booking focuses on whether they should be charged, what they should be charged with, and getting them the representation that they need early in the process to assure that arrestees are treated fairly and with dignity and respect. And that arrestees are diverted outside the criminal justice system and directed to an appropriate specialty court. And that decision can be made in the first 24 hours with central booking. If they need to be charged, that the charges are appropriate. Is this a misdemeanor? Is this a felony? Are we directing them down the right path that's most fair and efficient? That indigent arrestees are assigned counsel immediately as soon as possible in the process. And the hopes would be that permanent assignment of counsel could happen early in the process so that there is continuity of representation from arrest through court disposition. And then finally, that the bond and bond conditions at that first appearance are the least restrictive, consistent with public safety and to assure court appearance. I believe that all the stakeholders I mentioned are behind and in favor of central booking as I've outlined it, and we're going to continue to work together on the details, processes, and resource requirements to make it a success.
I can jump in there for one too. And one of the other things that comes as a result of all of this is the whole process becomes streamlined. And so every single day that we save that it takes to process an inmate, whether we're diverting them out, whether they're going through the felony track, is a savings to the time the person spends in jail and a savings to the county council's coffers, because every day we saved is $1. I think we're charging about $110 a day. So every single day we can condense the process, there's a savings for that.
Well,
Mr. Chair.
There's no doubt about that, but again, keep in mind how raw we are from yesterday. And for 2.5 years, we were saving money like crazy until we weren't. And again, you weren't here at the beginning. You're just here, unfortunately, what I consider to be the middle, and nowhere near the end. So there's some raw thoughts here. Ms. Simon.
Sure. We always hear things from one perspective, that we're going to save money, cost savings, but there's a cost, hidden costs all over the place that we're not talking about. We're not talking about staffing increases, how many people are going to be needed for this. We're not talking about that. We're talking, is there a cost to the criminal defendant who might come in inebriated, who can't really have full comprehension of what's occurring and might agree to something that he or she otherwise wouldn't have agreed, and to fast forward their process before they have a chance to understand and have time with their lawyer, and the increased cost of 24-hour operations, and the cost if we go to different municipalities. Do they have, the police have to get off the street to bring in a low-level felony arrestee to the downtown when they could be handling that in their municipal court? So we're only looking at this from one place. And I understand we have a hat as county council, but we also have a hat to make sure that all aspects are addressed. And that's not what we're doing. And maybe that's similar to ERP, but I just know criminal justice more than I know ERP systems, but we're not doing that. I want to hear from the public defenders. What are you going to need for the city of Cleveland? I want to know what it's going to cost to build out just for the city of Cleveland versus bringing in all the municipal courts and municipalities. Is that going to be a different cost? Are we to build larger, or is it going to be the same size? And, those kind of questions. I don't want to build something if the municipalities aren't on board going forward. If this is 24/7, what is that going to cost? Who's going to staff it? Are public defenders going to be around 24/7? I mean, we're not getting all the information we're going to need. And at the end of the day, it's about the arrestees and the criminal defendants, in my mind, to make sure that there's equity and make sure that we're treating them fairly. And it's not necessarily true that if they get shipped downtown, that they're gonna, it's gonna be a better situation for them. That's why we had the diversion courts in juvenile court. It was a diversion magistrate. We wanted to have justice in the community, in the neighborhoods, and not send people down to the juvenile court where they'll get lost in the larger system. So these are things I think I need to feel comfortable with. Like I said, it's a good theory. I think we should work toward it, but we're not ready. I think this is so premature to put dollars on the table when it doesn't even address all of what's involved. It's in some respect misleading that we're going to build this out for this amount of money, and then, we're not talking about everything else.
Other thoughts and comments? Any committee members have any other thoughts or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
maybe we can consider setting up like an MOU with all these different parties and stakeholders. We can set up one for the Justice Center Steering Committee, just to show how we would operate. All the stakeholders agreed to the terms and signed on it. Be a consideration, an option.
I'll tell you this, Mr. President, I'm torn here in that I know how important it is to move forward. I know how important this is to not just us and our bottom line in the jail, but to the court systems in general. I'm a little bit disturbed that we don't have more participation here, and I'm not going to hold that against everybody because, as Mr. Mason said, we only contacted them probably less than 24 hours ago. But the only ones that are here, the public defender has expressed concerns about big picture items, if I remember correctly. And that's where we ended up getting into problems with the ERP. And I really want to, disassociate this from the ERP. The ERP is a complete and utter mess. But I think our concern is moving into a situation like that, especially if we move forward on the jail, which if things look good and best case scenario might be a 3-year, probably more like a 4-year before we're in there. So do we have a couple of years of this type of booking process to evaluate? Would that be good? I think that would be good. But again, we have all these concerns and questions, and we don't have any answers, not from the administration, from the participants of the committee that they put together.
Right.
And I agree with the committee that they put together, probably light on some, bar association folks and some attorneys that actually are there during these processes in the courts earlier on. I'm just wondering if your suggestion might not be the way to go, is to assure the committee that the administration put together that we're going to move forward with this project once we have an understanding in writing from the participants that they're going to participate, much like we did with the Justice Center Committee. We couldn't do anything without an understanding and some sort of framework as we move forward. But there are problems with that too now. I mean, nothing's perfect. But I don't know, Mr. Mason, if you can get an agreement with, and I'm only looking really at Cleveland right now because that's the big dog in this, in a couple weeks, and then move forward on this, or if there are other people that want to jump on, how does that alter where we're at if we don't get Cleveland? So it just seems we actually on the Justice Center Committee, we still don't have a written agreement with City of Cleveland, yet they're participating in the voting on everything. And their clerk of courts has a vote, the judges have a vote.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest to you that if Cleveland is not going to be a participant, and I don't think that's at all a possibility they're in my view, then we're not going to do this. They're 65% of the business.
Right.
If they don't want to participate in this, it don't make any sense to go forward.
And I was going to
Mr.
echo
Chairman,
that.
I would
Mr.
say
President.
then, I would still recommend that we hold it in committee. 24 hours may not have been enough time for them, but even still, as a committee, we can't take 100% ownership for that. This was placed on the agenda. We know it goes to public work. It was coming to this committee. If the criminal justice system needs time, then our questions are valid. All the questions that were asked were, the content of the question was to the heart of the matter, and they deserve answers. And if the criminal justice system is truly invested in this, like I like to hope and believe that they are, they need to be able to weigh in and make any adjustments, anything that they need to say, it needs to be heard. And I like to believe we will not lose time by doing it right on the front end. It's different if we move forward and then we learn their concerns, and then something costs us more time on the back end. Start building right the first way before you start building. Know how you're going to finish, how you're going to start and how you're going to finish. Let the participants weigh in, give them the time they need, and then we will make up the time if we're all pulling in the same direction together. Let's hear what they have to say.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes, through the chair to Bill Mason. Have you had a conversation with Judge Early? And will you follow up before we have the committee of the whole, the next couple of weeks to have a discussion with her? I don't know if she's the one that makes the decision.
Bill, Miss Councilwoman Conwell, I talked to Judge Early about central booking every other day. And what I can tell you is that she's on board in principle, but there are issues that she still, as I've said, I'm going to make it clear again, that in one of
Your audio went out.
You're on mute.
Sorry. So one of the things that each person on the work group, including municipal court, is to determine is before they can make their determinations about what their processes and requirements are, what other agency must they have direct cooperation from and interaction with to perform their processes. So Judge Early has made it clear to me that until she sees exactly how the Common Pleas Court pretrial services program is going to look as part of central booking, which Judge Sheehan and his group is putting together, including a floor plan for what they need on the third floor of central booking, then she can make a determination, for example, whether she can support an aspect of direct filing in Common Pleas Court on those first charges. Until she sees that, that's a detail that she has withheld support for. But she is not required for whether or not we do central booking, but she certainly is a required stakeholder in whether or not and to what extent her court is going to be a partner. So yes, I would also say that for Cleveland, that the Cleveland Police Department, they've assigned, I think Captain Scafidi, who I've talked to about this program, to be the representative, and they always bring on a crew of people, including Lieutenant Carroll and others who since retired, to the work group meetings. And they are the important ones because they have to agree to staff a booking sergeant. They have to agree to participate in having discussions with the county prosecutor that they currently don't have on that first day. And so, yes, they're an important element for Cleveland on board. So I'd say it's the City of Cleveland Police Department, the municipal court are the players, Councilwoman Conwell, that we would need their support from, and I believe we have it. So if you're talking about an MOU, those would be separate signatories, I would believe.
And let me just add, if I can, and so, Bob came on board in February, and so I have been in, the central booking conversation has been going on more than just yesterday. It's been going on for over 20 years since I was the county prosecutor. In particular, to your cause, we've been having conversations since the day I got here about central booking and trying to get it forward. Certainly have moved forward as to get to the place where we are today as expeditiously as possible. But, one of the things that, it's just the part of the government, though. We went through the process to get an architect to design the building. I don't know if you're familiar with this yet, but they went through the design to they came up with a $7 million number to do central booking. We looked at that and said, there's no way we can do this. So we sent them back to their pencils, sharpened the pencils, redesigned it, rethink it, redid it, got back again with the stakeholders to make sure this is a process they can live within. And so I'm fairly confident what you're asking for. All the members have said a lot of different things, but what you're asking for, we'll be able to provide you in a timely fashion.
And when do you think that might be, Bill?
Well, like I said yesterday, I was thinking probably in a month. I don't know if we're going to have all signatures by then, but probably in a month, we'll have a pretty good idea what it is we want to do and what everybody's responsibilities will be, whatever enhancements there might be and costs for whomever's participating. So all those things will happen. I'm thinking a month's probably a fair number. And if we need more time, we'll let you know that.
I'm wondering if, well, it seems, as you said, Cleveland's the linchpin on this. And it seems the person that has the most legitimate concerns and questions is Judge Early. If we get an indication from Judge Early in some way that she's going to go forward with this, I would then say that we have a strong case to move this legislation immediately forward. But without that, and the president makes a suggestion of the MOU, which I like, but I know that gets a little bit more delicate because you're signing basically a document that's going to specify everything. I'm wondering if we could get Judge Early to a committee meeting to discuss where she actually is at, and if the committee at that point we're comfortable moving forward, we can then just move forward without an MOU. We could do the MOU. I think that's more legitimate because then everybody's on board. But it just seems to me to not. I don't want to send a signal to the legal community that Cuyahoga County Council is dragging their feet on building this out. Just the opposite is true. We want to build it out. So I'm wondering the best way, what you would suggest moving forward would be wait the month and a half or month or whatever it takes to get everybody to sign on, or do we try and get Judge Early to come to us and explain her concerns and if they're going to be taken care of in a period of time that's reasonable for her?
That's a great idea, Mr. Chair. I agree. I would like to hear from the judge.
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm good with hearing from the judge directly. I don't know that we have to have anything in writing from her. I mean, I think if we give her enough notice, she'll make herself accessible, and we can ask any questions that we need to, or she can get any assurances from the administration on anything that she might have some concerns about. I think it'd be a healthy process if her or any other people that maybe colleagues on committee think of in the interim, we can get them in here, and just like we do for a lot of other projects.
Right.
I support that as well, Mr. Chairman. I support that as well. Cleveland is the gorilla in the room. We don't want to build a Taj Mahal without them having said they're gonna come stay in it. So definitely, if Judge Early can give us that signal, I think that would certainly be sufficient.
Bob, Mr. Mason, why don't we do this? We'll hold this in committee. We'll hear it in 2 weeks. That'll give you 2 weeks to take care of any concerns, hopefully, that the judge might have. We'll invite the judge and any of her people that she deems necessary within 2 Tuesdays, so 2 weeks from today, with the understanding if Judge Early is okay with this, we can then take the step moving forward on the construction with the anticipation that as you move forward, as the construction is occurring, the other pieces to this project are put together and delivered to the council so we know where we're going and the actual cost of this down the road. I anticipate the actual cost, while not astronomical, is not going to be cheap. And dealing with a facility that has a lifespan, my great hope is a 3-year lifespan. You know, we're throwing good money after bad, but unfortunately, we're in this situation because of our actions of the near past. We have to do things, and I want the community of our legal community to understand that we're not delaying this. We just need to make sure that from our sense, things, the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And I don't think that's unreasonable. What say you? Mr. Mason?
I didn't want to preempt Bill on that one.
No, I'm fine. I mean, 2 weeks is tight, but let's see what we can do. I mean, we're having these meetings. We'll continue to have them. We'll give you our progress in 2 weeks where we're at, and we'll go from there. No problem with that at all.
Okay, well then I anticipate being back here in 2 weeks with Judge Early. We'll see what her side of this is. Hopefully we've come to an understanding. Again, I don't think we need something hard and fast on writing, but as long as she's comfortable moving forward, I think the committee would be comfortable moving forward. And again, I think we all understand the necessity to not stop this project, that we have to do it and we have to do it in a reasonable amount of time, but it's got to be done right. And
Mr. Chairman, if there's just one thought I would like to add is, while the judge is responsible for the Cleveland Municipal Court, the City of Cleveland Police Department is under the mayor, and they're as much as a part of this as also. So there's two components to it: the city, Cleveland Police, and the court. So we'll try to make that all mesh together.
well, in the end, and as much as I appreciate Cleveland being a main cog in this, the main cog is Cuyahoga County. You know, we're putting out the money to do this. In the end, it's going to benefit Muni Court. It'll benefit us. It'll benefit Cleveland Police, I think. It'll benefit us with the jail population to a certain extent, we hope. And it'll provide us with a couple years of seeing if this process is going to work in a new facility. And I anticipate that it will. But again, we don't know that. So going forward, if you could possibly involve the president with discussions going forward, I think that would be helpful. If he can't participate, he can designate someone from the committee to be there in his stead. I think that would be helpful. So as we move through this process, we're all up to date as to where we're at. Is that agreed? We okay with that?
Yeah, certainly. We'll keep you all abreast for sure.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else have any concerns or questions regarding this? So what we'll do is we'll hold this in committee. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks. We'll put out an invitation directly to Judge Early and whomever she wishes to bring along with her. And again, we'll invite all the participants. Anybody that we miss, please let us know, but we'll make sure everybody has at least a good week and a half notice that this is where we're going, with the understanding we're just focusing on the Cleveland Muni Court and Judge Early and her concerns about the project.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
if they could let us know if that is an impossible feat once they reach out to Judge Early and City of Cleveland, just so we'll know and we can maybe go another week out or something.
Well, we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that. I don't anticipate a problem with that. If there is scheduling or some other problem, we'll accommodate the court. as best we can to hear their concerns or to find out where they're at. And I would
you.
anticipate, hopefully, if everything comes together, that we'll be moving this item out of committee to the full council. We all in
Thank you.
agreement with that?
Yes.
Everybody comfortable? Okay, Bob, Bill, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking us through this, and I appreciate you understanding where we're at regarding this. Again, I can assure you, this is a top priority, at least from my perspective, to get this thing going. And we don't want to drag our feet. We want to get going on this. It also might be helpful if we get Jeff Applebaum to send his expert in 2 weeks to buffer what Bob presented today, because I think if we had that guy here today, Councilwoman Simon's question would have been answered quite easily as to where this works. And it works just about everywhere. It just seems Cuyahoga County is a little bit difficult to deal. We have a little difficulty dealing with ourselves more than anything else. So if I hear nothing else regarding this, I'll see everyone back in 2 weeks with hopefully good news to move forward, and Judge Early and everybody else in attendance. Is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none. Stay safe. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.